Hey guys, Luke on Sean's channel. Today I'm really excited to be bringing you guys a new updated version of my Spright deck. Spright is a great rank/link 2 deck that's able to spam the board, take control of the field, and deal in a lot of damage if needs be. The deck is more accessible than ever considering that all of the cards have been reprinted this year, and even their most sought after card in SP Little Knight has been reprinted in the tins to make it just slightly more affordable. So I figured now is as good a time as any to bring you an updated version of my Spright deck. Starting things off, we have 3 copies of Spright Blue. Now I'm going to say pretty much all of your Spright monsters have the effect that they actually have an inherent summon if you control a level or a rank 2 monster. So they all get that effect, they're all inherent summons, and for special summon that way they all gain effects additionally. So Blue, if he's special summoned, you can actually add another Spright monster from your deck to your hand, which of course is very good. You're able to combo this with Jet in order to go for an overextension. It's just a really good starter. So 3 copies of Blue is definitely very important start off to this deck. As aforementioned, 3 copies of Jet. Jet, when he is special summoned, you're able to add a Spright spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. This is really good at searching out your starter, your smashers, your gamma burst, or even if you are going down more control route, you can get your double cross off this as well. This is a pure Spright build, so I definitely recommend running Jet at 3 copies. If we were using a variation of Spright, Jet might be cut down to 2 or even 1, but this is a pure Spright deck, so I definitely recommend running it at 2. We also run 2 copies of Spright Red. Spright Red is a monster negate while he's on the field. When your opponent activates a monster effect, you're able to quick effect tribute 1 other level, rank, or link 2 monster and negate the effect. Then if the tributed monster is a rank or a link 2 monster, to activate this effect, you can destroy that monster. But if it's just a regular level 2, it just negates the effect. So it's still good that we're able to have access to an easy monster negate in Spright Red, so definitely run it at 2 copies. And also run the 1 copy of Spright Carrot. Spright Carrot is pretty much the exact same effect as Red, but rather than a monster negate, it is a spell or trap negate. 1 copy of Carrot though is all you need. 3 copies of Nimble Beaver. Honestly, Nimble Beaver might be your best opener for the deck. When this card is normal summon, you're able to special summon a level 3 or lower Nimble monster from your deck or graveyard, which can be really good for special summon out another Nimble Beaver. But we also run 2 copies of Angler, so it just depends on what way you open up. You might be summoning Angler rather than another Beaver. Honestly, most of the time you're better off bringing out the other Angler, just because we'd rather send Angler to the graveyard off of Sprint's effect. But definitely run 3 copies of Nimble Beaver, definitely extremely important. As we mentioned, 2 copies of Angler. Angler is really great. Most of the time Angler is dumped using our Spright Sprind, because Spright Sprind, when he's brought out, you're able to dump a level 2 from your deck to the graveyard, and Angler has the effect that if this card is sent from hand or deck to the graveyard, you can special summon up to 2 level 3 or lower Nimble monsters from your deck except for Angler. This is really good because if you're able to bring out Sprind, dump Angler, you're able to get out 2 copies of Nimble Beaver, and your plays can really get going from there. So 2 copies of Angler, definitely really important. 3 copies of Swap Frog. This of course is going for the Toadally Awesome play when we pair it with the Mirror Mage of the Ice Barrier in this build. It's an easy 1-card combo to get into Toadally Awesome, who is a fantastic monster Omni Negate. But not only that, Swap Frog also pairs well with Nimble Angler, because Angler has the effect to bring out the 2 Nimble monsters from deck if it's sent from hand or deck to the graveyard, which is really great because Nimble Angler is also water, so you can use Swap Frog's effect. If you have Swap Frog and Nimble Angler in a hand, you're able to activate Swap Frog, pitch Nimble Angler to get Swap Frog on the field, then you can activate that Angler in the graveyard in order to bring out 2 Nimble Beavers. So definitely run Swap Frog at 3 copies in this deck. It's definitely very important to run out 3 copies because also Toadally Awesome's effect during the standby phase to bring out another frog. It's great to have more fodder on the field that we're able to tribute for an effect negation as well, because Toadally Awesome needs to tribute an Aqua, which Swap Frog is. We also run the 1 copy of Mirror Mage the Ice Barrier. We literally only use her for the 1-card combo for the Toadally Awesome. So all you need to know about Mirror Mage the Ice Barrier is that when it is sent to the graveyard, you're able to add Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier from your deck to your hand. And that's great because Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier is able to special summon that Mirror Mage from the graveyard when it's activated on the field. So 1 copy of Mirror Mage the Ice Barrier, definitely really important. Hand traps now, 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 copies of Droll, and 2 copies of Ghost Ogre. We're going for a pure Spright build here, so if you want to run it with some other engines such as Light Winds or even Runic, you can pretty much take out all these hand hand traps if you want. That's no problem at all. But I like to have all of these hand traps in the deck, not only because they're good interruption for our opponent, but also these hand traps can come in very crippling to us. And when you're running these hand traps along with the 3 Crossout Designator that we also run in this deck, it's a very good way for us to not get interrupted. But again, I know how many comments we get about people not liking hand traps. If you don't want to run hand traps, don't run hand traps. This is just a way I like building the deck, and I think it's the most optimal way to win games. Going to spell cards now, we run 3 copies of Spright Starter. Spright Starter is literally a starter, but it can also work as an extender because it's a quick play spell that reads you can special summon 1 Spright monster from your deck, but lose life points equal to its original attack. And considering that all the Spright monsters are level 2, they all don't have like very high attack, they're all in the around 1000 mark. So it's not a big loss if you bring them out with Starter. But also, since they're going to be special summoned off a Starter, they get their special summon effect as well. So 3 copies of Starter, of course, is very, very important. I also like to run 1 copy of Spright Smashers. It's a good bit of removal. It can be very, very hefty with cost though, because you need to banish 1 Spright card from your hand or graveyard, then banish 1 level, rank, or link 2 monster you control and 1 card your opponent controls. So yes, it's very, very good because it is a non-targeting banish, but you are banishing 2 stuff from your card pool in order to get this to be pulled off properly. But honestly, most times it's worth it. So 1 copy of Smashers, of course, very, very important. 1 copy of Spright Gamma Burst. Gamma Burst is great because all of our monsters in this deck are level, rank, or link 2 monsters, so it goes without saying they don't have the highest attack. But what Spright Gamma Burst is able to do is all level, rank, and link 2 monsters currently on the field gain 1400 attack and defense until the end of this turn, which is really, really good because we're able to spam the board with a bunch of our level 2 monsters and activate Gamma Burst. That's a lot of big beefy monsters are able to just attack in. You might be able to win the game from there. Gamma Burst also has an effect for the graveyard. You're able to banish it, then target 1 of your level, rank, or link 2 monsters you control and it gain 1400 attack at the end of the turn, which can also come in quite handy, but most of the time you're using for the first effect to round off the game. We also run the 1 copy of Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier. Of course, we need to run it as the 1 of, because it's part of the 1 card combo for your Toadally Awesome. 1 copy of Call by the Grave. This is essentially a combo deck when it gets going, so we don't want to be interrupted. Call by the Grave is very, very important. Along with the 3 copies of Crossout Designator. You already seen the amount of hand traps that we run. Ghost Ogre and Droll especially can be very crippling to us, so we're able to cross out them. It's very important that we do. So 3 copies of Crossout Designator, very, very important. Again, if you guys don't want to play that many hand traps and throw in another engine, that's fine, just replace the Crossout. It doesn't really matter. Going into traps now, 1 copy of Spright Double Cross. Double Cross is a very, very good trap card. You're able to search it off with Jet. As the effect, you can target 1 monster on the field or in either graveyard and activate 1 of these appropriate effects. Either attach the targeted monster to a rank 2 monster you control as material, which I find myself using most of all because it's very hard for your opponent to get that monster back then afterwards. You could 2, place a targeted monster your opponent controls in a zone your link 2 monster points to and take control of it. Or you can 3, special summon that targeted monster from either graveyard to your zone a link 2 monster points to. So Spright Double Cross is a very good piece of interruption. I definitely recommend running it at 1. And then rounding things off, we have the 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Not only is it a good hand trap, but also a very good cross-out target too. Going into the extract now, we run 2 copies of Gigantic Spright. Gigantic is absolutely insane. He's a fantastic extender, but he can also work as a very big beater. It takes 2 level 2 monsters to go into him, but you can also use a link 2 monster you control as a level 2 for its material to go into him. And if you do, the original attack of this card becomes doubled. Gigantic Spright has the effect that during the main phase, you can activate this effect, detach 1 material from a monster you control, and if you do, special summon 1 level 2 monster from your deck. And also, neither player can special summon for the rest of the turn except for level, rank, and link 2 monsters. This is really good for a few reasons. 1, we mostly use this to bring out our Swap Frog in order to go into our 1 card combo for the Toadally Awesome. Or we can go for some of our other Spright monsters in order to extend and go for some other rank 2s if needs be. But not only that, if this effect resolves, both players are locked into level, rank, and link 2 monsters. So after this effect resolves, your opponent can't use Bestials against you, and also they can't Nibiru because those monsters aren't level 2. One thing I will say I had to be very careful about with Gigantic Spright is because he doesn't detach for cost, he's very, very, very weak to Ghost Ogre. So most of the time Ghost Ogre activates after the cost of a card is paid, so when you Ghost Ogre you destroy your opponent's monster, but they still get the effect resolved. But since Gigantic Spright doesn't detach for cost, if he gets Ghost Ogred, then he goes goes to the graveyard and the effect doesn't resolve at all. That's why I run the 2 copies of Ghost Ogre in the main deck, just because they're really good cross-out targets, because we definitely don't want Ghost Ogre to interrupt our Gigantic Spright at all, so please be very, very careful of that. But still, 2 copies of Gigantic is of course essential. The 1 copy of Toadally Awesome. Toadally Awesome, you probably already know what he does. He's an Omni Negate for the cost of sending 1 Aqua monster from your hand or face on the field to the graveyard. And then after you negate that card to your opponent, you're able to set it to your field if you want to. But not only that, Toad has the effect that if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can carry 1 water monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. This can be really, really good at either recycling a Swap Frog back to your hand if you want to have a bit of recovery going into your next turn. But it's also a way for Toad to recycle itself, which can come in handy, maybe, depending on how many Swap Frogs are still your disposable by that point. But I would say that if Roland Totem was still legal, Toad's effect in order to recycle itself would definitely be a lot better. But since we don't have Roland Totem in TCG, maybe that's just a tip for you Match Duel players. Nevertheless, 1 copy of Toad. I also like to run the 1 copy of number 65 Djinn Buster. He needs 2 level 2 Dharc monsters in order to go into him, so you're really only going into him with your Spright Blue and your Spright Jet. But I still find to be a fantastic card because he reads when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can quick effect, detach 2 materials from this card and then negate the activation, and if you do, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. That not only is very good because it is a monster effect negation, but also the fact that it deals damage, it can be very, very good if we're going for time too. So number 65 I find to be very, very good, and running it a 1 copy in this deck. I also like to run number 2 Ninja Shadow Mosquito. This card can be very crazy if it sticks and goes according to plan because he cannot be destroyed at battle, and also you take no damage from battles involving this card. All monsters your opponent controls must attack if able, and when an attack is declared, you can activate one of these effects of Ninja Shadow Mosquito. You attach 1 material from this card, and if you do, place 1 hallucination counter on 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. The effects of any of monsters with hallucination counters are negated, or you can 2 inflict damage to your opponent equal to the attack of 1 monster with an hallucination counter, which can be really, really good at just burning your opponent if you're able to pull it off. But I definitely recommend running it not only for that effect, but also considering that he can't be destroyed with battle is really, really good at a bit of protection. And it can also come in handy because if we're not locked into level, rank, or link 2 monsters, number 2 Ninja Shadow Mosquito is very good material in order for us to go up into our Zeus after the battle phase. So I definitely recommend running those 2 cards because you guys already know how very powerful Zeus can be. Going into the links now, we run 2 copies of Spright Sprind. Sprind is great because when he is special summoned, when he is link summoned, you can send 1 level 2 monster from your deck to the graveyard, which of course, as I already mentioned, Nimble Angler is very good for that because Nimble Angler has the effect that when sent from deck to the graveyard, you can special summon out 2 Nimble monsters. So Sprind is a good way of extending your plays. But not only that, Sprind has the effect that if another monster special summon while this card is face up on the field, you can attach 1 material from an XZ monster that you control, then target 1 monster on the field and return to the hand, which can be absolutely crazy and another good interruption that you can use during your opponent's turn. We run 1 copy of IP Masquerena. IP Masquerena, you guys probably already know what this card does. You're probably hoping it's getting banned soon, but I find it to be very, very good for his strategy. It has the effect that during your opponent's main phase, you can quick effect immediately after this effect resolves, link summon 1 linked monster using materials you control, including this card. This can be really, really good for going into your Knightmare cards, such as your Unicorn or your Phoenix. But one of the main cards that people go into off of IP is going straight into SP Little Knight. SP is a fantastic card, newly reprinted in the 2024 Megatons. It has the effect that if this card is link summoned using a monster from the extra deck as material, you can target 1 card in the field or in either graveyard and banish it. But also your monsters can't attack directly for the rest of the turn, which really doesn't matter. If you're going into it off of IP Masquerena's effect, you're not attacking that turn anyways. But not only that, she has the effect that when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can quick effect, target 2 face-up monsters on the field, including a monster you control, and banish both until the end phase. This is another great bit of interruption, and the fact that you can recycle it over and over again is great because SP Little Knight is able to target itself off of that effect too. So SP Little Knight I definitely recommend running in the deck. I also like to run a copy of the Fire Charmer and the Dharc Charmer as well. I was debating using the Water Charmer instead of the Fire Charmer, but I went against it mostly because if we're using this for the purpose of link climbing into our higher links such as a Unicorn or Accesscode Talker, it's more likely our opponent will have a fire in the graveyard because of a fire format, and also Ash Blossom is a fire monster. So the Fire Charmer is a little bit better for that. Either way, both of these cards are very good at stealing the respective attributes from your opponent's graveyard in order to link climb, or even if that monster is just very, very powerful. I definitely recommend running both of these in the extra deck. We also run Knightmare Phoenix. Phoenix is great because this card's link summon, you can discard a card, target one spell trap your opponent controls and destroy it, which is really good because if we're bringing this out of IP Masquerade, it can be a good bit of interruption as well. So one copy of Phoenix is very important, and also one copy of Knightmare Unicorn is a link 3, so it takes more material to go into it than Phoenix, but it has a slightly better effect that if this card is link summoned, you can discard one card, target one card on the field and return it to the deck, which is just better because that can target both spells and traps on the field and monsters on the field, so it's definitely worth it sometimes to go into Unicorn over Phoenix. And finally, one copy of Accesscode Talker. We have the link 3 in Unicorn, so we're able to link climb if we're going into like a bit of a grind game, and we know we can win this turn by going into Accesscode Talker. We're able to link climb up into Unicorn and then into Accesscode Talker. In order to bring Accesscode Talker up to a 5300 attack monster and go in for game, I definitely think Accesscode Talker is definitely very, very good to run in this build. Going into the side deck now, one copy of Volcanic Scattershot. This is only there for the sole purposes if we're going for time and the clock is ticking really, really bad and it's getting very, very close. What we're able to do is go into our Spright Sprind, and then Sprind effect you can dump the Scattershot. Scattershot has the effect in graveyard. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you inflict 500 damage to your opponent, which is just a great way to win for time. But only side this in if you are going for that tactic. He is not a good card otherwise. I also like to run 2 Kaijus, just because Kaijus can be really, really good and very disruptive if your opponent is playing decks that have towers in them, such as Pearly. I know their boss monster can be a real pain to out. So having 2 Kaijus in the side deck can of course be very, very important. There's no way for us to search the Kaiju, so definitely make sure that you're running some of the weaker Kaiju such as your Gamma Seal or your Humongous. 1 copy of each. For back row decks, or even the likes of Runic and Labyrinth, I like to have 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone just to banish their spells or trap cards that might be able to be recycled. Cosmic is a really, really good way of taking care of them decks. I run 2 copies of Thrust, just because the meta right now is a bit crazy. There's definitely like a lot of different decks that are topping right now, and there's no one way to like counter everything. 2 copies of Thrust can be really, really good at searching your out. And I definitely side a few one-of outs that were able to search off of Thrust. So if you're running Thrust in the side deck as an option, some cards I recommend you running alongside it will be Herald of the Abyss, Dark Ruler No More, Dimensional Barrier, and Different Dimensional Ground. The Thrust played along with all of these cards can just be really, really crippling depending on the matchup, so I definitely recommend you running this little package. It works if you're going both first or second. Then rounding things off, 3 copies of Evenly Matched. Evenly Matched is just the MVP of going second. If you know you're going second, you always want to have Evenly Matched in your side deck. It's just one of those cards that can be extremely crippling to your opponent. So that about does it for the deck. Please let me know what you guys think. I'm really happy with how this deck turned out. I definitely recommend giving it a try. Some cards like the SP Little Knight can still be quite expensive, so you guys want to check out the previous build I made a few months ago. That's absolutely fine. There's so many different ways that you can play Spright. I've made a whole video about the different ways that you can play it, so if you guys want to check that out as well, we definitely really appreciate it. Be sure to check out all the other content on the channel. There's plenty more to come, and you get early access to that if you guys become a member. But if you want to support us in other ways, we also have affiliate links down below as well in the description that could help you make these decks in real life as well. But other than that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.